Welcome to Preaching That Matters, a place you can find apostolic Pentecostal preaching, a place where all generations can be fed with the Word of God. We hope you enjoy.
No place like His presence. You know, I was in a meeting a couple of months back. I think it was the week before Thanksgiving. And they started singing this song. And the more they sing, the more irritated I become. And while they were singing, and I just didn't really like what I was hearing, the Lord spoke to me and said, I am tired of my children dishonoring me by their words. They ought to think about what they're singing before they sing the songs. I turned to the preacher who was about to preach. I said, if you don't take this service over, it's dead right now. He said, are you sure? I said, yes. He stepped in the pulpit. The power of God shut the music down. The power of God started moving. 17 miracles happened that night. You see, you don't have to go through a hot burning desert to find Jesus. He's not hiding from you. He's not hard to get to. He is not unapproachable. But if we talk in words that indicate He's difficult to reach, He gets angry at us. He'll let the world do that. But He will not let His blood-brought children dishonor His name and dishonor Him and letting the world think that, it's real hard to find God. Jesus said, the day cometh and now is when true worshipers shall worship the Father in spirit and in truth, and the Father seeketh such. The moment you open your mouth to worship God, He starts finding you. You don't have to look for Him. You don't have to get to where He's at instantly. He's where you're at. Because you're His child and you're His most valuable treasure. And He will do anything within His power to make sure that His treasures are protected. There's none like Him. What an honor to be in His presence. It's good to preach in places where whoever leads music has at least thought about it or prayed about it. They showed me this schedule before service, and that song was supposed to be, it showed on the schedule after my sermon. They said that was a mistake. I said, no, that should have been at the end of my sermon. Because that's what I'm going to preach about. Sister Horde, thank you. I don't find very many of these places as I travel. Most of the time I have to try to work my way out of the dark when I walk into a pulpit, because there's no light there for sure. But it's an honor to be here this morning. If you have your Bibles, I want you to turn with me to the book of Psalms, chapter 69. I am going to read this psalm from a different translation. So if you'll allow me to this morning, I will read it from the New English Translation. For the psalm is entitled, For the Music Director, According to the Tune of Lilies. Now remember the title, because what I'm about to read doesn't sound like anything beautiful. According to the Tune of Lilies by David. Deliver me, O God, for the water has reached my neck. I sink into the deep mire where there is no solid ground. I am in deep water and the current overpowers me. I'm exhausted from shouting for help. My throat is sore. Mine eyes grow tired of looking for my God. Those who hate me without a cause are more numerous than the hairs of my head. Those who want to destroy me, mine enemies, for no reason outnumber me. They make me repay what I did not steal. Oh God, you are aware of my foolish sins. My guilt is not hidden from you. Let none who rely on you be disgraced because of me. O sovereign Lord and King, let none who seek you be ashamed because of me, O God of Israel. For I suffer humiliation for your sake and am thoroughly disgraced. My own brothers treat me like a stranger. They act as I were a foreigner. Certainly, zeal for your house consumes me. I endure the insults of those who insult you. I weep and refrain from eating food which causes others to insult me. I wear sackcloth and they ridicule me. Those who sit at the gate gossip about me. Drunkards mock me in their songs. O Lord, may you hear my prayer and be favorably disposed to me. O God, because of your great loyal love, answer me with your faithful deliverance. Rescue me from the mud. Don't let me sink. Deliver me from those who hate me from the deep water. Don't let the current overpower me. Don't let the deep swallow me up. Don't let the pit devour me. Answer me, O Lord, for your loyal love is good. Because of your great compassion, turn toward me. Do not ignore your servant, for I am in trouble. Answer me right away. Come hear me and redeem me. Because of my enemies, rescue me. You know how I'm insulted, humiliated, and disgraced. You can see all my enemies. Their insults are painful and make me lose heart. I look for sympathy, but receive none. For comforters, but find none. They put bitter poison into my food, and to quench my thirst, they give me vinegar to drink. If you'll allow me for a little while this morning, I want to preach to you about learning to trust the Lord. The Lord bless you. You may be seated. Before I begin today, let me say what an incredible honor it is to be here. It's always good to be with God's family and God's children. It's good to be with friends. It's good to be with Brother and Sister Trimble. I have learned to love them dearly through the years, and it's just such a delight to be here with their children, be here with all of you. There's no one like God. Not last summer, but the summer before last, the summer of 2014. I had the privilege of speaking in the country of Brazil. It was a ministerial seminar that was held, and we had day sessions and night sessions, and I usually did the day sessions, which were 3 to 6 hours long every day for 4 days. And they did break it up in the middle of the day. We'd start around 9 and break at noon and have lunch, then start at 3 and go to 5 and come back at 7 and have service at night. One day after having spoke, I was sitting eating, and I learned to eat such delicacies as lizard. Really wasn't bad. And it was quite an experience, but we're sitting, actually it's the day I'm eating lizard, that I'm sitting here at the table and this young man sits down beside me. He's been my interpreter. He speaks English fluently, and he sits down. He says, Brother Hughes, I have a question to ask you. I was reading in the book of Chronicles, and it would appear that David's mother, according to Chronicles, was married to a man named Nahash that was not Jesse, and that she had children by another man. And is David the result of her marriage to another man? And how did David get here? Well, to be truthful, and I was honest with him that day, I simply said, you know what, son, I don't know that I've ever even paid attention to that. You know, you just read things, read over them, don't think about them, because it doesn't refer to David. It refers to his sisters. So David is not mentioned. And so I just read over it, and I said, I don't have an answer, but I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll go home this afternoon, and before service tonight, I've got most of my library on my computer, and so I can try to find some answers. I'll go do some research, see what I can find. So I went to my room and started studying and looking and got all kinds of ideas and opinions, and had a real hard time finding anybody that would agree. There was just no common thought. No one agreed on what happened here, and most of them kind of eluded it. They wouldn't even go into details about it, just kind of acted like they didn't have the answer, so they didn't write much about it. And so I come back to service that night, and I said, son, I don't have an answer for you. Brother Daniel, I don't know what the answer is, but I'll tell you what I'll do. When I get back to America, and I have time to spend studying, I'll find an answer, and I'll get you the answer some way. I don't know how to do it or how, but email me, and so we'll communicate. I'll find the answer, or try to find the answer for you. So I got home, and a few days went by, and I had an opportunity to study, and so I started studying. I couldn't find any more than I found the first time, and I went to most of the resources that I use that I think are pretty accurate, and still couldn't find an answer, and spent weeks looking and still found no answer. And several months later, probably in October or November of that year, it was just shortly before I came here, in December of that year, I thought one day as I was studying, maybe it might be a good idea to find out what the Jews think about David and quit reading Christian opinions, and maybe find out what the real people who knew about him say about him. So I jumped online and I started asking questions from a Jewish standpoint, and was amazed at the number of resources that appeared. And as I began to read them one after the other, the difference that I found was they all agree to the same thing. And their story is different than ours. According to the Jews, Jesse, or Yeshiv, as they would call him, was one of the most righteous men that ever lived. They say that in their history there have only been 5 people that have lived that have been so righteous that the only reason they died was because of the curse of Adam, not because of the curse of sin. They lived lives above sin, according to them. And one of these is a man by the name of Jesse. In the Midrashim and the Talmud, they go into great detail in discussing and talking about the life of David. And if you read it, you'll discover that Jesse was the chief of the Sanhedrin, which resided in Bethlehem. It was Jesse's role in life to render all judgment about the law. There were 70 men that would discuss it, but when the final decision came, it would have been Jesse that gave the ruling that this is how we believe that the law speaks of this. There came a time in Jesse's life where he started encountering conflict. Because if you look at his lineage, you discover he's not a pure Jew. Because his grandmother is a woman by the name of Ruth. And she's a Moabite. And the law said that you don't marry Moabites. And because he's the head of the Sanhedrin and he has spent his life studying the law and interpreting the law and he's given his life to it, they start challenging his decision simply because he doesn't have a right to pass them. It's not whether he makes good judgment or not. He doesn't have the lineage to be giving these kind of judgments. So he starts being attacked for his heritage and who he was. And this battle had already been fought in the previous generation by his own father, Obed. And Obed had to deal with these issues because his mother was Ruth. And according to the Jews, Ruth's marriage to Boaz lasted one day. And the day after the marriage, Boaz died. And to the Jews, that was God's way of punishing him because he violated the law. He married someone who he should not have married, and because of that, judgment came and he died. Now there's a child conceived by that one night event whose name is Obed. And Obed grows up being challenged and being ridiculed and mocked, made fun of, because you have no right to live among us. You're not one of us. And so he spends his life trying to just be accepted or be part of the land that he's living in. It got so bad that at one point in his life, he had to go to the Sanhedrin, and the Sanhedrin passed the judgment that said that the law was simply referring to men, not women. It was the men of Moab that prohibited Israel passing, would not give them water to drink or food to eat. And so the judgment God placed on them and forbid them in marrying was to the men, not to the women. And so Ruth was a woman, so Boaz's marriage to Ruth was considered to be legitimate. She was a proselyte as well. She became one of us. So Obed is a Jew. But he fought with that. That was a stigma on his life. So Jesse spends his life trying to make sure he understands the law and trying to interpret the law correctly. And he sits at the feet of the greatest of their scholars, and he is a capable learner. He pours his life into it, and he knows the law inside and out. So he rises through the ranks and eventually becomes part of the Sanhedrin, and then eventually becomes the chief of the Sanhedrin and the ruler of the Sanhedrin. He has 7 sons that have been born at that time. Now there's conflicts that say there were only 6, but there's history that indicates one of them died, and so that's why at the latter time of life you only see, it appears there's 7 and there's not 8. But he had 8 sons in total. One died, and David was number 8. This bothered Jesse so much that one day he decides that to save his children from the stigma and the ridicule he is receiving, he will refuse to have any more children. So he puts his wife away and refuses to live with her from that day forward. Years pass, and there comes a day as he's getting older that he desires to have a child that's truly Jewish, that has no stigma on his life. Now, if he's blemished, the only way that could happen is for him to marry a proselyte. Since he would be a proselyte, he'd have to marry a proselyte, and if 2 proselytes marry, their children are truly Jewish. So one day he goes to the servant of his wife. By the way, she has a name. Her name is Netzevet. So one day, he goes to Netzevet's servant and says, I want children that are truly Jewish. And the only way that's going to happen if I am not truly a Jew is for me to marry a proselyte. So I will free you and make you a free person if you will marry me. And if you'll become a proselyte, then our children will truly be Jewish. And she agreed. But as the days went on and approached the wedding, her conscience begins to bother her. And so she goes to Netzevet and tells Netzevet what Jesse is planning. And the two of them start talking about the history of Israel. And they talk about a Tamar and a Judah and the fact that this has already happened in the past. So we talked about a Jacob and a Leah. And so they make a decision that on the wedding night, they will switch places. And so on the night of this wedding, instead of the servant going into Netzevet or to Jesse, his wife actually goes into him, and a child is conceived. Now the problem is she's been put away. So if this becomes public knowledge, it will appear that an affair has taken place or that there's illegitimacy here. And so to protect her child and protect her husband, she has to act like she has no knowledge of how this came about. Months go by, and it becomes obvious she's expecting a child. When her 7 sons recognize she's with child, they go to Jesse and say, Jesse, we got a problem. Our mother is expecting a child, and we know you divorced her, and so she's going to bring disgrace to this family. You need to pass judgment because you're the part of the Sanhedrin, and she should be put to death. She should be stoned for committing adultery. But Jesse, being the chief, said, no, we cannot do that because the law says you got to stone both of them. And we don't know who the man is. And if we don't have the man, we can't stone the woman. So here's what we're going to do. When this child is born, it will be treated with total contempt and disrespect. It will never be allowed to eat meals with us as a family. It will take its meals in a corner. It will eat alone. It will be by itself. It will be treated worse than the servants at this house. If things are stolen in a city, he'll pay it back. So whatever's missing, it will be his responsibility to repay it. And we will make sure that his life is not a life of happiness or prosperity. So here's this child that's born. A mother that can't tell him who he is, can't tell her husband who he is. So the only thing that she has left to do is to teach this little boy that the world will not be your friend. And the world's not going to be with you. There will be no comforters. There will be nobody there to bring sympathy to your life. So you're going to have to learn that your only source of hope is God. And when you can learn to trust God and put your faith in God, it doesn't matter what people do. It doesn't matter how they treat you or how they act to you or how they interact with you. You don't let their behavior change who you are. You are someone special to God, and God will be your source of strength. So when you're in trouble and you need somebody, you just go to God. When you're alone, you just go to God and you turn to the Lord, because Jehovah will be your strength. He's brought us here. He will take you through all these things. It doesn't matter what's going on in your life. He will always be there. So a mother at a very young age begins to teach this little boy that it's God who's going to change your life. It's God who's going to make you different. You see, the world today says that he should have grown up a sociopath or a psychopath, because his nurturing or his environment should have produced an evil person. But a mother said, no, it doesn't matter what he has to live in or live with. If I can just teach him that it's God. If God would honor me to conceive in a one-time event, then there's something special about your life, and God will see you through. God's going to be there. So when things go bad in your life, just remember it's God. And so as this little boy grows, he's never comforted by dad. He's never comforted by brothers. He's treated as an alien and a stranger. He's never considered part of the family. And as he matures and gets older, the brothers start telling dad, you know, it's like God's rubbing our face in this. Nothing's going wrong. Everything's going right in his life. We got to get rid of him somehow. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to send him to take care of sheep where we've heard reports that lions and bears roam. So if a lion kills him or a bear kills him, then justice came and the reproach off our name has been taken away. So every time you hear of a lion or a bear, let's send David. Let's tell David, that's where you take these sheep. Jesse had no need for sheep. He's the head of the Sanhedrin. So there's just a small group of, he's not a shepherd. He doesn't have a major flock. He just keeps these because this is how he punishes David. So he sends David out into a wilderness to face lions and bears, hoping lions and bears would kill him. But in a wilderness where there are lions and bears, a 12-year-old or 13-year-old would write, "The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want." A child who's never enjoyed any goodness in his life would say, "The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want." The Lord is my shepherd. The Lord takes me places. The Lord is my strength. The Lord is my high tower. The Lord is my refuge. It's the Lord that's going to bring me through all of this. The world doesn't want me to survive. My family doesn't want me to survive. But the Lord, He's on my side. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. When they want evil to come, He just takes me to a valley where there's lots of greenery. And I walk through green pastures. When the storms cause the streams to rage, He takes me to places where there's still water. He restoreth my soul. He leads me in the paths of righteousness because His reputation is at stake. Because His name's on the line and I'm His child, and I acknowledge I'm His child, and I turn to Him and He becomes my source of strength, and I don't worry about what's around me. I just say, no matter how dark this valley may be, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, where lions and bears roam, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow, I will fear no evil, for Thou art with me. Yea, though it doesn't matter how dark that valley is and what the world says or world's tried to do or possibly families tried to do to you to wreck your life. God says, I've got a place I can take you through. I'll walk with you through the valley of the shadow of death. And I will fear no evil, for Thou art with me. Thy rod and Thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. You see, if you ever learn to trust in God, when life gets really bad, God allows His kids to call a time out so that they can have a banquet. Now, this banquet's not back in Jerusalem in a palace somewhere. This banquet's going to be right in front of an enemy. He's going to force an enemy to watch. He's going to force the enemy to pay attention because my kids need to be fed today. It doesn't matter what life's done. It's time out time. You see, He knows what you need and when you need it. You have no clue of tomorrow or the future, but if you ever learn to be a man after God's own heart, and the thing that made David a man after God's own heart is that he recognized that God's his only source of hope. There's no hope nowhere else. I can't get it from family. I can't get it from friends. I won't get it from neighbors. The world's not going to give it to me. My source of hope will be from the Lord. And it's in the Lord that I will learn to trust. I will put my trust in the Lord because He's my refuge. He's my strong tower. He's the rock that I run into. He's the cliff that I hide under. The Lord speaks to a prophet. Says, Samuel, take your horn of oil. I need you to anoint somebody. You need to anoint a king. Samuel says to the Lord, no way I can do that. Saul hears I've anointed a king, he'll kill me. No. Samuel, do what I asked you to do. Take your horn of oil. Go to Jesse's house. You anoint a king. Okay, Lord. Just go telling them you're offering a sacrifice. So here comes Samuel. Now, when they hear the news Samuel's coming, Jesse and his sons are seized with terror because they're convinced that Samuel is coming to pass judgment on them for what they've done to this boy. The way they treated him. Their day of reckoning is coming. They're going to be exposed. Everybody's going to know. And so they're terrified. And so when Samuel approaches the city and they know it's Samuel and they start saying, Samuel, did you come in peace? He said, yes, I came in peace. Gather the elders. The Sanhedrin needs to be here because I want them to watch what I'm about to do. Bring them. But I don't want just the Sanhedrin, the elders of this city here. I need your sons to show up too. And now they're sure the revelation's going to take place. Now they're going to find out for sure what's happening in their lives. And so here's Samuel to anoint a king. After the sacrifice and the meal, Samuel arises and he starts to anoint a king. And as he's looking at these 7 boys standing, the oldest got his attention because he's good to look at. He's pleasant to the eyes. This has surely got to be who God wants to lead this country. Because from appearance, he's got it all. And God would say, no, Samuel, you're looking at the outside. I'm looking at the heart. This boy has a problem with anger and rage, and he is not fit to be a king because of his anger. Do you understand that your anger will prohibit you from becoming a king in God's kingdom? You better learn how to control it. It caused Eliab to lose the ability to become the king. The next, no. The next, no. The next, no. Finally, he says, Jesse, are there any more lads? He didn't ask for sons. Are there any more males at this house? Yeah, 1. Where's he? With the bears? With the lions? Go get him. So they send a messenger. Takes hours. Samuel says, we will not sit down until the lad arises. Hours go by. They find David, bring him home. According to the Jewish history, David went home first to clean up before he came to the feast. When he gets home, his mother hears him come in and says, what are you doing here, son? You should be taking care of the animals. You know they're going to be angry at you for leaving the animals. No, they sent for me. They told me to come. And when she heard Samuel had called for him, she started weeping. And she said, all right, son, you're not going alone. I'm going with you. So when David changes clothes and he's washed and cleansed himself, and he sanctified himself, he goes to the feast. And when he arrives, she's not permitted to go in. So she stands at the door. And when David enters, God has to say to Samuel, get up, because your king is standing before you. What Samuel said he wouldn't do, he did. We will not sit down until the lad arises. But God had to get him off the chair because he had already got tired of waiting. And then here comes the boy. And as he kneels in front of Samuel, and Samuel takes his horn of oil, and he starts pouring it on the head of David, according to the Midrashim. As he's emptying this horn of oil, the horn will not empty. It just keeps flowing. It flows down his head. It flows over his garment. It flows down to his feet where he's kneeling. It's running off his clothes. Finally, that oil starts to solidify on his head and forms a golden crown as Samuel anoints him king. How many of you have lost your anointing by complaining, by being angry about life, by being frustrated because of what life produces, by not thinking God was fair with you and didn't allow the right things to happen in your life? You see, this little boy that had absolutely no hope of ever being anything in life discovered that he could write and sing to God. So he starts writing songs that he sings to the Lord. Most of these songs he wrote were written before he's 30 years of age. These are not songs of his later life. He would say, I was glad when they said unto me, let us go into the house of the Lord. Now David knew God didn't have a house. But in his mind, he knew that God's house wasn't the tabernacle in the city because it didn't exist anymore. It had been burned to the ground. All that was left of that was an ark stored in somebody's house. David discovered that all of nature was God's house. So anytime, in any place he was at, he could find the house of God. I was glad when they said unto me, let us go into the house of the Lord. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemy. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all of the days of my life. I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. David wasn't a priest. He had no right to the kingdom or to the tabernacle or anything, but he had a right to God's house. Because God's house was anywhere he started worshiping the Lord. And before Jesus would say to those people that day that the day cometh and now is when true worshipers shall worship the Father in spirit and in truth, and the Father seeketh such, he had already demonstrated it to a boy out in the middle of a wilderness where lions and bears were at trying to devour him. When the lion come and took a lamb and he took it out of the lion's mouth. He didn't harm the lion to begin with. He just freed the lamb. But when the lion turned on him, he devoured the lion and destroyed the lion. When the bear came, he didn't destroy the bear in the beginning. It was only when it tried to destroy him that he destroyed the bear, because he never went trying to hurt anybody. He knew how much it felt to be hurt. So he spent his life trying not to hurt anybody. So he'd spend his life in Paul's court trying to help a king that God had abandoned, trying to soothe the soul of a man that was evil, because he's going to try to help anyone. And no matter how bad Saul was to him, and how he chased him, and how he tried to wreck his life, he would never raise his finger against the anointed of God, no matter how evil the anointed was. America better listen to what I'm saying. The church better listen. There are too many people raising their hands against God's anointed. It doesn't matter if they're good or evil. You don't raise your hand against God's anointed, because a man after God's own heart knows God will take care of the problem. And it doesn't need men intervening to do it. God will take care of that problem. See, there's none like him. You see, when you've been in a wilderness, it's not hard to say things like, who shall abide in thy tabernacle? Who shall dwell in thy holy hill? He that walketh uprightly and worketh righteousness and speaketh the truth in his heart. He that backbiteth not with his tongue, nor doeth evil to his neighbor, nor taketh up reproach against his neighbor. That's who God's looking for. Or maybe you could say things like, oh God, for in thee do I put my trust. O my soul, thou hast said unto the Lord, thou art my Lord. My goodness extendeth not to thee, but to the saints that are in the earth, and to the excellent, in whom is all thy delight. Or, the Lord is my rock and my fortress, and my deliverer of God, my strength in whom I will trust, my buckler. But this is a kid that they put poison in his food and vinegar in his water. But he didn't let poison in food or vinegar in water make him something that his mother told him he should never become. Don't let the world take you these places. Don't let life cause you to become bitter or angry or resentful. You learn to trust the Lord. It doesn't matter what life produces. You can just discover to sing a song in the middle of a battle. You can discover how to sing things when life is painful. You'll have a song. I can remember vividly the day I stood about as far as I am from the back doors of this congregation in a hospital waiting room, and a doctor walked through the door and just pushed the double doors open, stepped inside and said, Mr. Hughes. I said, yes. He said, your son expired, and turned around and walked off. Pain was so incredible. I bowed my head, I sobbed, and I felt arms around me. My dad was across the room. My co-pastor or co-assistant pastor I was assistant pastor with was there. I thought one of them had walked up. There was no one there. When I opened my eyes, I was alone. But the Lord I started hearing a song. The Lord is my strength. The joy of the Lord is my strength. When my wife awoke from the anesthesia that she had been put under during this time, she said, what happened? And I had to tell her. I said, but the Lord gave us a song. Now I can't sing, but I started singing to her that song. And that was the comfort. No matter what life brings or where you walk, there'll always be a song. You see, in a wilderness, you can write, the Lord is my shepherd. You see, for us pious people that's never gone through nothing in life, we've never suffered, it's easy to write things about how good God is when everything's going right. But how can you write songs about God when things are not the way you want them to be? When people are doing things to you that hurt, or somebody's walked out of your life or abandoned you and told you you're not lovable, you're worthless, you're stupid, you're dumb, they hate you, they wish you weren't born, and you feel miserable. Are you going to become vengeful, or are you going to say, you know what, there's this place I can go. There's this place I can go that doesn't matter what's going on out here. I've got a God I've got a God that I can go to. And He is my comfort in time of trouble. He is my comfort in the time of a storm. He is my rock and my shelter. He is my glory and the lifter of my head. He is my refuge and my strong tower. He is the hills at which I look unto to gather my strength. My strength is from the Lord. It's not from the world. It's from God. And when I become God dependent, I have His heart, and I'm after His heart. See, I always thought David's, please stand. I always thought David's ability to be a man after God's own heart was his ability to repent. But that wasn't what caught God's attention. It's this little kid that everybody wants to throw away and say he's worthless, and he brings reproach on this family, and he's no good, and he'll never be anything. It's this little kid out in a wilderness that some of these Psalms could have been written as early as 9 years of age. A 9-year-old would say. I don't know how old he was when he wrote, "The Lord is my shepherd," but it's a long time before he became king. I don't know when he wrote those songs. So my question to you is, are you going to let life give you a song or give you bitterness? You're going to let the struggles of life cause you to lose your joy, your strength. I remember meeting a little boy. His name was Edwin. Odessa, Texas. He was born with spina bifida. At birth, had to have immediate surgery because his spine was open from his hips all the way up between his shoulder blades. As a result of his disease, one kidney did not work at all. One kidney only functioned at about 40%. The doctors told his family he'll never live past puberty. He's not going to live. His body will not be able to go through puberty. First time I met him, I think he was around 9. He rolled in his little wheelchair. He said, "Who are you?" I said, "My name's James Hughes." "Oh, you're Dr. Hughes." That's what they call me. "Bend over here. I need a hug." I knelt beside a little wheelchair. He wrapped those arms around my neck. Now, I knew that his body was shutting down because his kidneys couldn't take creatinine out of his body. And he would scream in pain because of the poison in his body if you touched him. So I said, "Edwin, I can't hug you because I don't want to hurt you. You hug me." So I had to kneel beside him. He'd hug me. Not long before he went to be with the Lord, they were riding in a vehicle and he quit breathing. His family rushed him to the hospital, rushed him in the emergency room. He's blue. They take him in the trauma unit. And all of a sudden he gasps and starts breathing again. And when he started breathing, he opened his eyes and he sat up and he said, "Mama, did you see him?" Mama said, "You see who?" "He was here. Did you see him?" "Who'd you see, Edwin? Who was here?" The Lord Jesus came in and he sat on my bed beside me here. And he started talking to me. And the Lord said, "You need me for a little while, but I'm going to go be with him in just a little bit." His parents said, "What do I do?" I said, "Well, he had an encounter with God. God knows. Riding down the street one day, he said, listen, Mom, listen, Dad, listen, listen. Do you hear it? What do you hear? I hear the angels sing. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the Lord will give you a song. I just, somehow in my mind, I believe that shepherd psalm came the day after a lion attack. I believe that's when that psalm showed up. When he's fought a lion and he won. Boom. There's the song. So what songs will we be singing? So we sang about it today. That's why you should have sang that song at this end, not at the beginning. I will trust in the Lord. I will trust in Him. Why? Because He's got all things in control. It's all in His hand. But you know what I discovered? If I ever get to where He's at, and I ever enjoy His presence, I don't want to leave. It's too incredible a place to be. You know, I've been in places where the power of God would move in so strong that you just didn't want to ever get out of there because there's just no place like it. And if I ever learn, that's where my strength is. Doesn't matter what life's doing. Doesn't matter how people are treating me. I'm going to run to the Lord because He's my strong tower. He's my glory. And even when I fail and I have to prostrate myself in His presence because I've sinned and I've come to admit how bad I've sinned, say, Lord, I'm guilty. I've done all this. I'm a sinner. I failed. He leaves His throne, kneels in front of me and puts His hand under my forehead, and He lifts my head so He can look me in the face to say, you're my son, child. I still love you. You're a man after my heart. Why? Because the greatest thrill God gets is when you show up and act like you enjoy being around Him. That's what God enjoys. When He shows up, or I come into His presence, and nobody has to drag me there, but I come running up, hollering, Abba, Father. You know what the literal translation is? Papa. See, I know what that means. When that 6-year-old or 8-year-old comes running my house hollering, Papa! Papa! Where are you? There's no thrill greater than that. You know what that's about. There's just no thrill like that. God said, that's what I get when you show up. And you act like you like being around me. I'm looking for you. You don't find me, just cry. He is able to succor them that are tempted. The literal translation, He has His hand cupped to His ear, listening for somebody that's in trouble to cry. Say, God, I need you. The instant you cry, boom, He's where you're at. You don't find Him, He finds you. You don't have the power to find God. You never could find God. God found you. He was looking for you. He saw something in you. Life said you were broke. Life said you were worthless. The environment you come out of said that nothing good would ever come in your life. Why don't you stand in the front of your enemy today and have a banquet, a celebration today, and say, all right, devil, in the presence of mine enemies, I get to enjoy the best food that's around in your presence, because there's none like you. Gracious Father, thank you today for your incredible presence. Lord, thank you for a child that learned to love you, that learned to turn to you, and in turning to you wrote some of the most incredible words in our Bible. He shouldn't have had a song to sing because life only dealt him misery. He shouldn't have had joy in his heart because he drank vinegar and ate poison. But he discovered you were his source of strength. God, some heart today has wandered away from you. And they've lived on the fringe for a long time thinking that you would never care about them again. But you care. Would you go to where they are today? They can't find you, but you find them. Would you touch that heart today that's lost? Wondering, lost their passion for life, lost their joy. Would you find them today, Jesus? There's no sin you can't forgive other than us saying there's nothing to you or denying the power of your Spirit to change us. Lord, I pray today that a heart would feel forgiveness today, no matter what the heart has done. Would you bring healing to our lives this morning? Would you let us walk in your presence? Thank you for the comfort of your arms and your love today. Would you touch a heart right now with the power of your Spirit? In Jesus' name. The Lord's speaking to somebody. I don't know who you are. I do know that the Lord impressed me to reach for somebody today that thinks that there's just no way they can ever recover or get back to where God was at in their life before. It's a lie. That is a lie. You can become anything you choose today. You just got to choose to get there. He's here. Would you respond to what you feel this morning? I open these altars to you today. Would you respond? Maybe someone needs a shepherd's song to sing today. Yours won't be the 23rd Psalm, but you'll have a shepherd's song. He's here. We worship you today, Jesus. There's none like you, Jesus. We give you glory and honor today, Jesus. We bless you today, Jesus. There's none like you, Jesus. We worship you. It is in you we put our trust. I trust you, Jesus. You have never failed me. You've never let me down. You've never abandoned me, Jesus. I trust you today. I put my trust in you because there is none like you. Thank you for the places of still water. Thank you for pastures that are green. Thank you for a battle where an enemy is out. Because there's always a banquet in a battle. I thank you today, Jesus. I worship you. There's none like you today, Jesus. I give you glory and honor today. I bless you, Jesus. You and you alone are worthy. You and you alone are worthy. I worship you, Jesus. I worship you, Jesus. I worship you, Jesus. Oh, Jesus, I bless you. I bless you. I bless you. I worship you today.